Hey there everyone, it's Scurvy back again with another episode of Scurvy's Ramblings, and today I want to talk about that I think non-woke media could be so much better than it is now. I'm a big believer that if the conservatives want to win the culture war, they actually have to produce things that are, well, good. I don't think they could just be mid. I think they actually have to be good and stand on like a leg of their own. I know a lot of people on my side of the aisle really like Stellar Blade, but I believe that they're deluding themselves. The game is just mid, and there's far better games like Nier Automata and Devil May Cry 5. I'm not going to get into that whole rant again, because I mainly want to talk about the Daily Wire's new show, Mr. Birchum. To give a very short review of the series, I think right now it's kinda mid. The first episode wasn't all that great, but the second episode was a whole lot better. When I say that this show has potential, the second episode had quite a few jokes that actually made me laugh. Meanwhile, in the first episode, there was really only one joke that actually made me laugh. The rest just made me chuckle a little bit or just smirked. But the second episode, for the majority of it, I was actually chuckling, and then there were a lot more jokes that actually made me, laugh. I think what will make this show really good down the line is if it keeps on focusing comedy through commentary. And the show actually has some pretty insightful commentary, believe it or not. But at the time of recording this video, right now, I think the series sits at a 6 out of 10 in my opinion. It's not quite mid, and I really think that second episode was actually pretty good, so it did raise my rating of the show from like a 5 to a 6. But as I said in the beginning of this video, I really do think if we, the sane, normal people, want to win the culture war, we have to make stuff that is truly, good. At least, like a 7.5 or 8 out of 10, on average. It's not like these companies aren't capable of making anything that's truly great. I mean, the Daily Wire made What is a Woman, and I made a review of that documentary on my channel. Gave it a pretty high score, too. And from what I've heard about Bentkey, the Daily Wire's children's content platform, it makes some pretty good stuff for, young audiences. Honestly, I think what we need is, truly groundbreaking stuff that isn't woke. It doesn't need to have conservative messaging in it. As a matter of fact, I don't really want it to have conservative messaging in it. I just want something that's good. As much as I found Lady Ballers to be funny, I don't think it was, groundbreaking. Now, I'm just kind of spitballing this idea from the top of my head, but what if a company like the Daily Wire or some other non-woke company decided to make a dark fantasy story that is actually respectful to the things that it pulls from different mythologies? I think the best pieces of media from my side of the political spectrum tend to have a lot of reverence and respect for the genre or source material that they make their projects on. And to me, the biggest weakness that they should avoid is to try to make it cynical. Now, what do I mean by cynical in this context? I'm talking about the stuff that just seems like a blatant ripoff of another property. In today's day and age, there hasn't really been much of that compared to, the past, where, there was a lot of, Christian versions of, I don't know, I'm just gonna say a random property, Indiana Jones, but it's not very good because it's just a blatant ripoff of Indiana Jones, just with Christian messaging. A lot of leftists think that Mr. Birchum is just conservative king of the hill, which makes no goddamn sense. But getting back to cynicism here, I feel like Stellar Blade is a good example of what I'm talking about. It's not a political game by any stretch of the imagination, but it certainly seems uninspired and just trying to copy Bayonetta, Dark Souls, and Devil May Cry without understanding why those games work the way they do. When it comes to Mr. Birchum, I think the cynicism that I'm talking about here is on prime display in the first episode, but in the second episode, you don't really see much of that. As in my opinion, I think that's when the show starts to carve out its own identity, instead of just trying to be conservative Family Guy. Going back to the world of video games for a moment, I want to talk about this game called Crowsworn, and I think that game is looking really good. I think it is inspired, it has soul, and it avoids a lot of the pitfalls that non-woke media falls into these days. Because what it's trying to do is to just be a good game with a good story and with an interesting premise. That's all it's trying to do, and we need more stuff like that. Now, I'm not saying that media should not have conservative themes and messages. I'm just saying that it can't be the only thing that a piece of non-woke media has to offer. As much as I liked Lady Ballers, at times I felt like the messaging was just too on the nose. I think certain jokes would have been better as just visual gags, and not just saying a message out loud. Though South Park makes fun of all sides of the political spectrum, I think it really does understand how to convey more conservative themes and messages in some episodes, just like how it's capable of delivering more liberal themes. If there's one form of non-woke media that's really good at actually creating its own identity, I would have to give that award to indie comics. So that would largely be stuff like the Warband comic or the Rippaverse. A lot of people like the Rippaverse because it reminds them why they like the medium of comics. And that would be interesting and relatable characters with cool powers and interesting stories and premises. As for the Warband comic, oh baby, that's just getting started. I'm already looking forward to the next issue. Even though the mainstream comic book industry is basically dead, the non-woke independent comic scene is doing pretty well. So go look up some non-woke indie comics, give them a read if you like them, support their work. I also think the good non-woke books and comic books can actually be made into good adaptations, whether it's television, film, or even video games. Like, imagine an animated version of Rip and the Silverback. I think that'd be pretty cool. Most importantly, these would have to be good adaptations. They cannot go the way of Berserk 2016. Since I mentioned Berserk back there, I think we should also talk about localization for a second. Imagine if there were more non-woke dubbing companies that aren't just Vic Mignogna's company. I think we'd have a lot more faithful scripts that don't add a bunch of stupid political references that are going to be dated by the time the dub comes out. Funimation. Conservative media companies. The anime and manga industry is booming. Why not try to get your hands in that? You guys might actually be capable of fixing the problems in the anime localization industry. I also think good non-woke media needs to be capable of thinking outside of the box. This applies a lot more when creating something new in a genre than adapting something old. Respect the tried and true, but don't use that as an excuse to stagnate. Ultimately, what the consumer wants is new stories that respect the viewer's time and attention. While it's okay to bring back something old like every now and then, we desperately need new things. That's how the entertainment industry moves forward. That being said, another effective tool that I notice a lot of non-woke media use is evoking nostalgia. So imagine this, a brand spanking new sci-fi IP that's well crafted and made with a lot of care that evokes similar feelings to watching some of the older Star Wars movies for the first time. Not that it literally is those older Star Wars movies, but its creativity and its soul makes the viewer acknowledge why they like the sci-fi genre to begin with, and why they fell in love with it. This new property stands next to Star Wars, and not beneath its shadow. I do think that the people who run non-woke media companies are perfectly capable of actually realizing something like this. Right now, people are really dissatisfied with the state of Hollywood. Non-woke media companies, now is your time to pounce on that audience. Give them stuff they want to watch. Just don't fall into the same trap that the woke people have fallen into, where you prioritize the message instead of the entertainment first. What I just said about TV shows and movies also applies to video games as well. The game needs to be good. It needs to be gameplay first, good story second. The consumer is also tired of quote-unquote movie games. If y'all follow this simple advice, you're gonna get far. I could promise you that. With all of that being said, thank you guys for watching the video, and I think the next video that is going to come out is most likely the Dylan Mulvaney video, But if that doesn't come out, it's probably going to be another episode of Scurvy's Ramblings. I also live stream most Saturdays, so feel free to say hi when the ScurvyRum show is happening. See you guys in the next one.